Now. Yeah. And. Wendy. I go. What's your name, brother? Now we can get started. Hey, man. Here it is. 2:15. Time to get going. Good afternoon and welcome to the, I gotta stand over here. Yeah. This is the right spot? Sure. Yeah. Welcome to the March meeting of ASALH. We are happy to be celebrating Women's History Month, and we are particularly blessed that we have such a distinguished hero in Septima Clark to be our focal point for our discussion today. But as we always do to begin our meeting, we like to begin with a rendition of Lift Every Voice and Sing. And because it's warm, we'll ask you to stand.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high peace in the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Let us march on till victory is won. Let us march on till victory.
Amen. So we are here at Avery, and it's so coincidental that we're talking about Septima Clark, all right, who was both a educated here and a faculty member. And we want to thank the staff, particularly Darren, who is here on a Saturday, and also his linkage with being a member of the Board of Trustees of the Charleston County School District. Our conversation about leadership and citizenship and the importance of education, it all kind of comes together today. As their president, I want to report that we have filed on time by March 15th, the annual report required by the national organization. So we should be in compliance. At least they haven't kicked it back yet and told us that we're out of compliance. And we're really, really pleased to have had the opportunity to experience the September to play in Pure Theater. We were hoping that Dr. Dockery would have an opportunity to join us today. She still may stop in sometime during the course, but many of us, myself included, and we were talking about this before, as you drive the connector and your GPS says you're on the Septima Clark connector, very little attention is paid to how important and who this woman was, and referred to as the mother of the civil rights movement by Dr. King, a really important person. And it's appropriate that we're really blessed to have so much of her information around us. And the play actually creates an opportunity for us to dig a little deeper and reflect on that. But before we begin our conversation about the play and our leader, let's take a quick look at a biographical piece that was done by SCTV, Educational Television here in South Carolina. I guess it was done in 2014 when Septima Clark was inducted into the South Carolina Hall of Fame.
The South Carolina Hall of Fame was founded in Myrtle Beach in 1973 to recognize and honor contemporary and past citizens who have made outstanding contributions to South Carolina's heritage, history, and progress. Septima Poinsett Clark was born in Charleston, South Carolina in 1898. She was the daughter of a laundrywoman and an illiterate former slave.
Her father was a very docile man, and I can understand that under the conditions that he lived under, being a black man in the time that he lived in. You know, when you're raised and being told that you're nothing all your life and don't you dare look me in the eye at the same time as I beat you, you have to learn patience. That's what she learned from him. But from her mother, she learned strength.
Septima Clark was a teacher. In 1916, she graduated from the Avery Normal Institute in Charleston. Her first teaching assignment was a black school on Johns Island.
It was a poverty-stricken area, did not have any of the amenities of Charleston. Septima Clark's method of teaching was very innovative, it was progressive, it was ahead of its time, and she learned this method from Johns Island, and that is essentially meeting her students where her students were, but also treating her students, particularly adult students, with tremendous respect.
During Clark's 30-plus years of teaching experience, she learned the value and role of education in the community. In the 1950s, Clark was invited to lead summer workshops at the Highlander Folk School in Monteagle, Tennessee, a grassroots education center founded by social activist Miles Horton.
One of the things that made the Highlander Folk School unique and also made it a target is that it had integrated workshops with white and black people living and working together. And it operated on the philosophy that oppressed people know the answers to their own problems. Septima Clark believed that the most important thing was to develop local leaders, people in their communities who could assume a leading role in getting things done and solving community problems. And she was concerned with developing women in particular as leaders.
Rosa Parks attended one of Clark's seminars months before the Montgomery bus boycott in 1955. Esau Jenkins was a Johns Island farmer and bus driver who was teaching the passengers on his bus how to read. Jenkins attended sessions at Highlander, where Clark was developing the concept of citizenship schools. These were designed to help African American adults pass the literacy test required for voting. Jenkins proposed the idea of a citizenship school on Johns Island. All they needed was a local teacher.
They wanted to find someone in the community who was well-respected, well-known, that people could talk to and not feel ashamed that they're illiterate. And Bernice Robinson came to mind. She was a beautician in Charleston. She was popular among African Americans in Charleston and Johns Island, and really had a gift of speaking to anybody and everybody at their level.
As people learned to read and write, something inside of them changed. They got more confidence, and that confidence allowed them to act, to stand up against the white power structure in their community.
When Highlander School closed, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference established the Citizenship Education Program, modeled on Clark's workshops. By 1970, 2 million African Americans had registered to vote. Yet, Septima Clark and others of her generation remain largely unsung heroes.
We have a narrative of the civil rights movement that's built around national media reports. There aren't any dramatic images that were captured and broadcast on television or reprinted in the newspapers of people learning how to read and write and become citizens. But the people who do show up in those national images are people who passed through the citizenship schools and got the confidence to act because of what they gained from that citizenship education.
Because see, without Septima Poinsett, you have no Martin Luther King, you have no Rosa Parks, you don't have a President Obama.
Well, just as context, I'm one of those people who rides across town and did not have an appreciation. I am someone who, for example, thought that I was very much in tune with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, had no idea that the person undergirding the ideas of SNCC was in fact Septima Clark. Again, as I said earlier, we're blessed here in Charleston to have a number of opportunities. So I'd like to ask Valerie Frazier and Aaliyah Wiggs to come forward. They worked on the College of Charleston's installation of a mural and a series of plaques in the Education Center. Let them come forward, talk a little bit about their work. Aaliyah is one of our 1967 Legacy Scholars and newly anointed as a, what do we call them, a young scholar by by the Association for Study of African American Life and History. Ladies, have a seat. And those of you who have already gone to the play, get ready because you're going to be joining them in a minute to have a conversation. So tell us a little bit about the work that you did. What did you learn? And what's your hope for the exhibit that exists at the School of Education?
Well, hello everyone. As mentioned before, I am Dr. Valerie Frazier, and I am the director of the 1967 Legacy Program. I am also a faculty member in the English department and one of the co-chairs of the college's Commemoration and Landscapes Committee. And it is out of that committee that we then came up with the idea for the installation and the mural by Natalie Days that we just celebrated a few weeks ago. So we were very pleased and blessed to be a part of this project, which is long-term. There is a part 2, so stay tuned. We'll celebrate how Septima Clark has inspired our youth at the College of Charleston and pay homage to her work as a club woman, a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Gamma Xi Omega chapter. She was the president from 1952 to 1954. And as you mentioned, we have installation panels that celebrate her life and work. And in addition, we just have fallen in love with the mural. So what we want to do at the College of Charleston is to tell a fuller story of those who have contributed to who we are as a people. Sometimes those stories have been invisible. We want to make sure that people like Septima Clark, the icon, the mother of the civil rights movement, that she is seen and appreciated. So that's why we came up with the idea to have the mural by artist Natalie Days. And we're just so happy she was able to work with us and to give us such a beautiful memento that celebrates Clark. And what we want to do here as a part of the Commemoration Landscape Committee is to keep this process going, to share the College of Charleston's part in the story, because you know that Septima Clark was born on the College of Charleston campus. So that's why we feel so very close to Septima. In addition, we do have an auditorium in the Education Center, room 118, named after Septima Clark. And there is a marker on Wentworth Street, also named after her. So we just want to appreciate her as an educator. And the college awarded her with the Doctorate of Humane Letters as a sign of appreciation.
So how much did you know about Septima Clark, and what have you discovered?
Coming into, I guess, College of Charleston, really what I heard about her was. Okay, so a lot of what I'd heard about her was mostly in my middle school and high school social studies classes, and she was never someone who was a major focal point of those courses. Her name was maybe briefly mentioned, but we didn't really learn a lot about her life. And it wasn't even until I started coming to school here that I learned that she was born in Charleston and born here on my college campus. But when I was in Dr. Frazier's first year experience, 1967 Legacy and Beyond class last semester, we were given the chance to go to the auditorium as it was being renovated and sort of give our feedback as students on what we thought was working, what we thought would be more appealing to see. And that's when I was actually inspired to write my final paper for that course on Septima Clark. And so Dr. Frazier was like, well, we have a committee that's focusing on this renovation of the auditorium. Would you like to be a part of the committee? Would you like to give your feedback in that? So I did that, and that's how I've got to become so connected to this project. But I've just really enjoyed learning about the person she was, because beyond being a grassroots citizenship school activist, you didn't really learn much about her life, about her being a mother, about her being a wife, about her being the second of 8 children, born to a father who was formerly enslaved and a mother who was a laundress. Those are things I never would have learned had I not had this opportunity, I believe. So I felt like it was really important that students now having this auditorium get to maybe learn more about her as well as the public.
So are you publishing your paper?
I don't have any intentions of publishing it. I'm sure Dr. Fisher said people maybe want to have access to reading it. So
We have a website, Discovering a Path, and they would like, thank you. The College of Charleston has a website called Discovering Our Past, and there are plans in the works to then upload Aaliyah's essay to that site so that everyone can learn from and enjoy it.
And I'll be presenting my work also at the Research Expo that's coming up in April.
When in April?
Yes.
Okay, from 10 to 1 p.m. where? The big TD Arena? Where they play basketball?
Exactly.
All right. Let's put that on our calendar. So, show of hands, who have been to Pure Theater to see the play? Okay, so, I'm going to drag Dennis. Would you join us up here? Cheryl, you didn't hold your hand up? Okay. Missy, come join us, please. So, as I mentioned, Dr. Patricia Dockery, who was for a long time a fixture here at the College of Charleston, an archaeologist by training, actually wrote the play. And we had the opportunity, a number of us had an opportunity to see it. And I was hoping that she might stop by so we might have a conversation with her about it. But the question for those of you who've seen the play is what was most memorable for you?
For me, I was born here in Charleston, but I moved away. My dad was in the military, so we were away. And so I hadn't been here for over 50, 60 years. So coming back here, and so I didn't know a lot about her. But going into the play, there were so many similarities and things. She went to Avery. My mother went to Avery. She was a teacher at Promised Land School. My mother taught at that school, years later, of course. But, so just so many things. I live on Wadmalaw Island, which is next to Johns Island. All of those things are just so many similarities that, that I could relate to. And so it was just fantastic. It was just an awesome feeling that I just felt so connected to that. My mother was one of 8, and she has her youngest sister, the last one, is 90, and she lives next door to me now. And I came back home and I said, you have to go. So I'm coming back to see it again, and I'm bringing her. So she's excited about coming. And these are things that she didn't really know about, about her. And so she's excited about coming and hearing and things that would be familiar to her as well. And I think that's, I just think it's important to see that.
Did not introduce you. Please introduce yourself.
Oh. My name is Mitzi Lawrence, and I'm born at Roper Hospital there. And currently I live on Wadmalaw Island, which is where my mother is from. My dad was from Johns Island. And I lived in upstate New York for over 50 years. And I came back in 2019. So I'm just I guess I'm a come year, been year. Oh, yeah, been. I don't know how come back here. Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Dennis Muhammad. I'm a 92 graduate of the College of Charleston, and I'm actually one of the first students to be hired to work in this building, Avery, to help get the archives together. back in 1991. So that's one of my proud moments of being a student at the College of Charleston and the legacy of Avery. I had the opportunity to see the play with my 13-year-old daughter and my wife, and seeing my daughter completely locked in to the play and her experience and learning about a local legend as a woman, that was impactful to me. As far as the play is concerned, I think the thing that stood out to me the most was knowing her struggle and her evolution as a woman to be a leader of this community and a national leader, to see how she navigated that with her relationships. The play hit on her relationship with her mother. It hit on the relationship with her child. One of her children died, which I did not know, and her relationship with her husband, who abandoned her. And she even coming back to take care of him in his last days, but yet still having the focus to be a servant of her community and her people. Sometimes, we in this day and age, we talk a lot about self-care, but people don't talk about the sacrifices that you make in your personal life when you sacrifice for your community, to help build your community, to help develop your people. And so to see her story and her evolution into a leader and serving her community, but knowing the personal sacrifices and struggle and even suffering that she went through was very impactful to me.
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed the play. It was very riveting. The personal connections that were made in the play, it illuminated who Septima Clark was as a woman, not just an icon. So by showing her humanity, it then served as a bridge for us to understand how she could show so much humanity and love. That was a constant theme that we saw throughout the play that was emphasized, that she learned love from her father in particular, in that she then was able to spread that throughout her civil rights work. So that's something that I truly appreciated in the play. It was not long enough in my estimate, because we could have gone another hour in terms of all the things that she contributed to this community and to the wider global platform.
So, what questions went unanswered for you in seeing the play?
Well, I was just curious, and I can understand, because we wanted to focus on her as a female and an icon in her own right. I was curious about her relationship with Dr. King, that he took her with him to Norway when he received the Nobel Peace Prize, because she is the mother of the civil rights movement. But the play did not delve into that as much. So I would just be curious to see a little bit more of that. Definitely.
Any questions that went unanswered?
Not really. It could have gone on for a longer period of time. Yeah, it's just that, yeah. I was just in awe about the entire thing.
Dennis, anything went unanswered for you? Or?
Well, I know if you visit the Penn Center will talk a lot about her relationship with Dr. King, and they met down there frequently to plan and strategize for the movement, particularly here in the South. I don't think that was hit on, but in terms of the play, working for Charleston County School District and her being the first Black woman, I believe, on the school district board, and seeing the things that's going on with the school district today, particularly our board, I wanted to know more about her struggle with Charleston County School District, her struggle in being a teacher and being fired because she was not allowed, she was not allowed to teach Black children at first, but because of her work with the teachers and being fired and the lawsuit that came out of it, I wanted to know more about that. They hit on it, but they didn't talk about it in detail. They just, I think they said in the end that she did win that case.
I thought that she lost her position though, because of her involvement with the NAACP, and she did not, I'm not, she did not, she wouldn't give it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
To that too.
Yeah, I think, I think she was rallying the teachers.
Yes.
To be a part of that and to fight for their rights. So
yeah, I think it said that she was trying to get other teachers to also, not rescind their membership in the NAACP. I think she said there were like 5 people who were eligible, but
There were 200, there were like 200 Black teachers. All right. And she asked them to not to comply with the state law that said, if you work for the NAACP, if you're a member of the NAACP, you cannot be a teacher in the school system. All right. What struck me as an organizer or somebody who tries to organize was the thing that she said she learned, right? Which is if you want to make something happen, you got to bring the people with you. All right. Yeah. The notion that she, I think, and 5 others, agreed out of the 200. The absence of that united front made it more difficult. Ultimately, they did win the lawsuit. All right. But
it was years later.
It was much later. And later in the play, they talk about her suing much later for back pay. All right. And that sort of thing. So that for me was a lesson or a reminder that as hard as you might work as bright as you think you are, if the people are not coming along with you, if folks don't understand the nature of the work and where their hearts are, and what their interests are, they will be able to participate. Wendy and Margaret, you saw the play already. Anything you'd like to add about what was memorable?
Thank you so much. I think what really stood out for me was a real sadness when her husband abandoned her. And I think that I realized that she really gave up her personal life for the greater good of the community. And I just can't imagine giving more of yourself than your family, giving up your family for your entire community. So I didn't know that about her. And I do have a question about this is, since the citizenship schools were so successful, where does that stand today?
Let's get back to that.
Okay.
All right. On the play.
I think the biggest thing for me was seeing what a dynamic woman she was. I mean, prior to that, I had heard of Septima. I had read some stuff about her, but she was, if you will, a cardboard figure. And the play put flesh on her and made her, a feeling, hurting, struggling, triumphant, all those different kinds of things. And so I think that was what was most memorable for me, is just seeing her in all of her humanity. Probably of the things that, if I were to say, and I guess it's kind of been mentioned already, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of the dynamic in the civil rights movement between her as a female mother of the civil rights and the men who were out front. I mean, that's a whole story and probably could be its own play all by itself. But I would have been very interested to see how she maneuvered in that environment. It was very, how she did the freedom school, how she taught English to adults or language skills to adults was very, I really felt like I could kind of get into her head in terms of how she was approaching things. And so had I been able to see how she maneuvered in the arena of these men, most of them preachers, and working the strategies of the civil rights movement would have been fascinating. So that would be my sense.
Who else should see the play?
All young people.
Yeah, young people, young people. Because they don't understand what has transpired. I mean, I can remember I lived upstate New York in not a predominantly African-American community. And my children were raised there. And I don't know, I had a conversation with my youngest son about something. And I don't even remember what it was about. But he told me, he said, Mom, you were a racist. And I said, oh, okay. And I said, yes, I think I am. I said, and that's based on the experiences that I've had. And in the things that I've experienced, traveling around the United States, living in Texas, my dad was on a military, we lived in military housing. When we lived in Corpus Christi, Texas, I could look out the back window, of the place we lived in. I could look at the school. I could see the school. All the kids, was a diverse community. I could not go to that school because even though it was on a military installation, it was only for the white students.
What year was that?
That was in 1954. Okay. And so all of the Black children who lived in this community, we were bused into the town of Corpus Christi, which was 15 miles. And at that time, people didn't have two cars, so my dad had a car. So what the parents did, the dads would carpool and, and whoever time it was to take the children. And I think there were probably about maybe 15 or so kids. And so if it was my mom's time to drive, then my dad would get a ride onto the base with with one of the other dads. And so we were bused. So they would carpool, however many cars we needed to get to the school. And then we did that for a while. And then the fathers got together and they went to the base commander and said, look, if you can't have our children go to this school, then you need to provide transportation. And so the naval base got a bus so that we could go, we could be transported into Corpus Christi for the school. And so, having lived that kind of experience, you kind of have a different attitude about a lot of things. And
I mean, I think that is fairly true. I mean, I was born in 2003, so times are very different now. Obviously, laws have changed a lot, and even so, in my own experience, coming from a mixed family, my experience is different than others. So I feel like young people really don't understand what that was like, and we really never could, because it's not hopefully ever going to go back to the way it was then. So we really just have to learn by, learning by taking on that effort to learn.
Now, this child who called me the racist is now 36, and he has a different outlook on life, just from his own experiences.
Leah, who would you want to see the play?
Would I want? I would honestly want my peers to see the play. I feel like just a lot of the students at the College of Charleston aren't really aware of figures like Septima Clark. Most people did not know that she was born on campus, despite the fact that students now live on that property, which is crazy to me, honestly. I feel like our peers just really need to take that chance to learn more about her and learn more about figures like her.
Now,
And I feel that it is important for the young people and all people to then acknowledge a fuller story of Septima Clark's life. And some of the issues are very relatable, like we think about her financial struggles, even with food security. I think things like that. She was a non-traditional college student going back to get her bachelor's degree as an older student. And particularly as the College of Charleston has a history of being a college that welcomes non-traditional students, that welcomes students from a military background. I think that also makes it relatable because you see those through lines in Septima Clark's life. And so to me, there is a Buddhist or a bluesy element to Septima Clark's life that, I think it's wonderful to celebrate and to see the triumph that she experienced, but to then also recognize those, if you will, moments of sadness, those moments of unresolved issues. Like we talk about, she may have won the case, but did she ever get all of her back pay? Even if, for example, organizations tried to rally and have a dinner in her honor to, provide some financial support. But ironically, they were so much in debt that she never saw any money from that fundraiser. So things like that, it shows that the struggle is real and it is continuing. So there's no happily ever after that's guaranteed. And sometimes we like to tie things up in a neat bow, but that's not the reality that many of us, like Septima Clark, the iconic Septima Clark, that's not her reality. And also another thing that I think is interesting, that she had enough courage to talk about things that were, like, as Toni Morrison calls it, unspeakable things unspoken, like lynching. Like as a club woman, she would go around in the 70s talking about lynchings and the realities in the South. And I think that was so brave. And to share that with people, to share the real Septima, who wore pearls, true, but was not afraid of then doing the work as any foot shoulder for justice would do. That's when I commend this, when we celebrate that story. And I think young people and all people need to have access to that, attend the play, and also do the research in the archives.
I think all educators need to see this play, particularly primary and secondary, from the teacher in the classroom all the way up to the superintendent. That's who needs to see this play.
And, I would say, just like I'm going to bring my 90-year-old aunt to see it. She's not aware of this. So there are others in the community, who are not, young, who don't know about her. And I think that's important too, that we all need to know about this person. And there are so many others that are unnamed who have done so much that we don't know about. And I think so. I think it's important at every age that we need to know about these things. And I'm learning some things now that I didn't know because that she was born on this campus. I don't think that was a part of the play. It was.
They mentioned it.
Oh, they did. Well, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't remember that part of it. But.
So Dr. Frazier challenged us to go deeper. And one of the wonderful things that we have an advantage of is being here at Avery, and Avery has an archive. And I'm going to ask Aisha to talk to us a little bit about, how do we go deeper? What's available?
Hello, everyone. I'm Chaiko. I'm a manager of archival resources here at Avery, and we've digitized a lot of her collection available online on LCDL, which lists the Book Country Digital Library. And you can access the photographs, scrapbooks, correspondence, newspaper clippings about her life, her relationships to other people. There's also an online exhibit of her life that was created by a scholar, Catherine Mellon, who helped to create her book, Freedom's Teacher. And that book is here at Avery. You can purchase it elsewhere as well. But the digital exhibit has an online tour that you can kind of guide yourself around here in Charleston. We're also getting some audio. You can understand her life, her interviews that she's done, online exhibits, and the Discovering Our Past exhibit that Dr. Frazier mentioned earlier is also available online. And there's a special tour on her life online as well. So, but you can come here to Avery and in person Monday through Friday from 10 to 12:30 and then 1:30 to 4:30, and make it by appointment only to come and use her materials in person. We do ask that you make an appointment and that you have that kind of idea of what you want to look at in her collection, because it is about 20 boxes or so of materials. And I pulled out a few of her items in the back here for you to access and to peruse today, but you can always come back and use them on your own. Thank you.
Yeah, so couple things. One, we're meeting here today and able to meet here today because the staff of Avery were willing to come in on Saturday morning to open the doors for us. Avery needs additional resources. Some of us only have opportunities on the weekend to come in. So they need to be open on the weekend. In order to be open on the weekend, they need money. Where's that money come from? It can come from the public, it can come from the college. But in terms of if we want to go deeper, if you will, this place is a place where we can go deeper. And we should try and do that. The other thing is, last night was playing, Aisha sent me this link yesterday, and I was playing with it in the section that talks about videos. There are several interviews with Septima Clark. And she talks about, one of the interviews, I spent about a half hour, talks about what she knew about her mother, her grandmother, right? Her dad and their family, the notion and her description of what she knew and did not know about slavery, what was passed on, is fascinating. So not only if you're interested in knowing more about her, you'll know about her, find out about her family history, and you'll discover something else, some other things about Charleston. You'll discover some other things about slavery and enslaved people. And it might stimulate some questions in your head. How far back do you go? Do you know where your people are from? Do you know when your people got sold south? All right, or if your people got sold south? Those questions are all part of the breadcrumbs, if you will, to take you down the rabbit hole if you'd like to do this. And this was a great opportunity to do that. Another question, and I'll throw this out. So citizenship schools were an effort to teach people what their rights were and what their obligations are. as I read the material, it suggested that Septima Clark was saying, people, you have a right to vote. People are trying to keep that away from you. But that right to vote is something that can be used to get things that you need and or want. So the whole notion of today, in today's context, I think Margaret started to raise this question, who's doing the work of teaching people their rights and their obligations? Anybody? Take a shot at that, audience, or?
Well, the Highlander School is still operating. So they, though the video said they closed down, but they did close down for a minute, but they are reopened and they do still do workshops and activities to educate folk about their rights. I know schools generally have been trying to do this effort as well, and then up to community members to do their own kind of work.
I think that's a fatal flaw in voter campaigns is the focus is on voter registration, but not voter education and enlightenment. The cornerstone of a democracy is to have an enlightened electorate. Democracy does not work if those who are given that right to vote are not educated on their rights, democracy, government, and those things, because citizenship in truth is the highest office in the land, but you have to know your self-interest and you have to know your collective interest and the balance between. And so, you know, I don't see those things talked about when, you know, politicians come and ask for our vote. I don't see the voter education and enlightenment part of this process. It's all party politics, but not enlightenment and education. And so I think we need those schools. We need people to do that. And I don't know if we need to do that in our churches or should we bring citizenship schools back or I don't know what needs to be done, but something needs to be done because particularly in the Black community, our vote, in my opinion, is stolen every election.
And then the other thing that I would say, you know, you have this big emphasis on voter registration, but it doesn't matter how many people you have registered if they don't get to the polls. And that's a big thing with me, that, you know, you can have 100 people registered, but if you don't get them out to the poll itself, it's like you don't have anybody. And so I think that's a big thing that we need to make sure that not only don't just register them, make sure that you have a way to get them to the polls. But I think they also need to be educated over what they're going to be voting for too. Yeah, and I think education is a big part of that as well.
So in the play and in all the materials you see, the school, the Highlander School, as a important point, and then SCLC taking over and utilizing that. SCLC still exists as an organization. There's also mention of the NAACP. All are still existing organizations, and question is whether or not they're doing the work or not. So here in Charleston, we have Charleston County immediately. We have upcoming mayoral elections and council elections here in the city of Charleston. And in North Charleston, similarly, actually the entire city council, and they'll be electing a new mayor. Who's in the space doing the citizenship types work necessary to make certain that the interests of the marginalized community, let's just call marginalized communities, that Septima Clark and the folks were addressing back in the 50s? Who's doing that work?
I was just going to mention Kids on Point, that organization that helps students locally. This summer, they're starting a Civil Rights Institute, and they will go on tours. They're going to go to Penn Center. They are also then going to connect with some of our local leaders to find out about voter registration and voting rights and that long history of struggle. So I think this is something that should be commended and supported, as this will be their first year. So, but it is a start, and they are reaching out to young people, ninth graders, rising ninth graders.
But almost every one of our churches have vacation Bible study, Bible schools. Isn't that right? And perhaps, so Kids on Point are doing a pilot, all right?
Yeah.
We've been doing vacation Bible school for a gazillion years. And not only do the young people wind up coming, all right, but their parents wind up coming. So that's an opportunity, I think, that perhaps reintroducing Septima Clark and Citizenship schools as an idea might work. Letitia Vaughn is with us, and she's with the E3 Foundation. They're involved in some interesting challenges now, both at the state and local level, doing some of the work. Letitia, you want to share with us what you guys are doing?
Good afternoon, everyone. Count it a privilege to be in the number this afternoon. And even from the conversations we're having, just learning so much about Septima Clark. We have our tickets. We're actually taking our entire staff and families to see the play, and just are really excited about what Dr. Dockery Williams is now doing. So my organization, E3 Foundation, was actually birthed out of the need to connect people to systems. I am a former school district employee with Charleston County School District. I was a school principal and associate superintendent, where I supervised a group of schools. And what I saw over my 25-year plus career in education was that there were a lot of things happening at the systems level. So when I say the systems level, I mean school board meetings or state house policies being passed that parents or people just really didn't know or understand. And unless somebody is helping to translate that, then we just still won't know what's happening. So our work is really around how do we educate, empower, and help people to connect to the system in a way that works for them. So for example, right now, we have convened a group of people across the state around legislation that's currently in the State House. House Bill 3728, I think is the bill. And you may have heard about like all the things that are happening in Florida where they are banning books. They are blocking curriculum. There's now a push to ban historically Black universities. There's a ban to keep sororities and fraternities out of from getting public, from getting dollars. And so they have a bill similar to that in South Carolina right now. And the focus is, it's called Transparency in Education. Last year, there were 5 bills in the House, and now there's 1 in the Senate. And so just this past week, we took a delegation of people up to testify at the Senate committee hearing. And so what we know is that, again, just lots of people don't know what's happening at the State House, and you wouldn't know unless you were there every single day. So there are people there, that's their job every day, to lobby and talk to senators and be in those meetings, but average people don't know that. And so what happens is, because we don't know, our voice is not heard. The people who can go are people of privilege, right? They're people who can take off work in the middle of the day. For a Senate committee hearing, they only have to give 24 hours notice. So if you work a job where you have to take off and you have childcare issues, you can't go up to Columbia at the drop of a dime. And even with the hearing that just occurred, it was scheduled to occur one day and then they changed it to another day, right? So all these things are barriers to the average person being able to plug into the legislative process. So what we've done over the last couple of years is work to educate people on how they can plug in. So you can write written testimony, but we have to help people to be able to do that. You wouldn't know how to do that, right? Or we can teach you how to call your legislator. We can teach you, if you want to go there in person, how to stand up and do a testimony at the Senate committee hearing. And so I am just so happy to be continuing this legacy because it takes education. Don't care is that a lot of people just don't know how to plug into the process or don't have time to plug into the process. And so that's part of the work that we're doing.
So I fuss with Letitia and the folks from the Truth Coalition, Pro-Truth Coalition, because they're working so hard at the State House to block things, and stuff is happening right across the street on Calhoun Street and down the street on Broad Street. And there's just not enough of us who are aware of the process. So it appears to me that there is a need for the people who are doing the work also having a movement infrastructure where there is this education going on, so folks find out how you, in fact, hold your elected official accountable, how you debate, create, throw a little sand in the machine. It appears that they may have enough votes to pass it, but what they've been able to do at the state level is throw enough dirt in the machine that it doesn't work quite as efficiently. And sometimes you can grind it to a halt. So I think those are some of the lessons that Septima Clark was able to pass on to folks in the 50s and the 60s. The challenges that they had were pretty steep, but the resources that we have available to us are far more the tools that we have available to us and that we're not using them enough. And that legacy, the challenge that the play presented to me was, what do we do to preserve that legacy and move it forward? Other questions, comments, folks?
You raised the question about all the people who have contributed that we don't know. And I would call to your attention that the Library of Congress has 1 million stories called the Foot Soldiers of the Civil Rights Movement, where the people like, Joanne Robinson and others who supported, and no one knows who they are or what they did. So the documentation is there. They're oral stories. And I'm not quite sure how to access it, but I know AARP and Library of Congress joined to collect them, and they're there. So there's that. The other thing that occurs to me is, as you were talking about Septima Clark and how she worked, it seems to me that Stacey Abrams has written the playbook. So we don't have to create much of anything. We need to look at it and figure out how it's applicable and do the work. It's doing the work, and it is work. So, and I commend you on being at the State House. And I would say to you, there are 2 really good resources. They are not Black community specific, but again, AARP that has a lot of information about how to lobby, what to say, who the people are, what their positions are, what they have voted on in the past. All of that is accessible at aarp.org. And the other source is the League of Women Voters, which is a nonpartisan organization and is not, well, not visibly directed by any particular party, but again, has the basic information. What is citizenship? How do you affect it? What's your obligation? And what's your duty as a citizen, which we don't talk about much, but I think we should.
Okay, anybody have anything else they'd like to add to this conversation?
So first of all, thank you for that information. I'm like cataloging it in my brain. Two things occurred to me as this conversation was going on. One, which I really consider pretty sad, is I'm not from Charleston. My child was born in Charleston, and my oldest child came here when she was 10 months old. They've never learned about Septima Clark in school. Not one time. And they went to Charleston County schools, and now they go to Dorchester public schools. And for me, this idea about how other cultures educate their children is really important. Other cultures don't rely on other people to educate their children about their culture. And unfortunately, that's what we have done as Black people. And so the other piece of our work, very personal, which is how do we co-create educational environments that support Black children? Because our children are not being supported in public schools. And we see that through the data. I'm not saying anything anybody doesn't know. The second thing that occurred to me that I want to trying to think about the most delicate way to say this is that everybody's not repping with you when you say you're working for Black people. So we built a coalition around responding to what the state superintendent said about CRT at the time. And many of the people at us decided they weren't going to do that because we said we are standing for Black people. When we started to have a conversation about policing in schools, which we know disproportionately Black children are over suspended, Black children are over incarcerated. Several organizations decided they didn't want to participate in the coalition anymore. And so I just have to say that out loud, that it is a loan you're talking about, you're working on behalf of Black people. But if we don't do it, who is going to do it? So who are the organizations that pulled out? I will not say that. I'm not going to say that, but there were organizations that pulled out.
So we have the opportunity as an organization to work in collaboration with E3. Last fall, they did a parents summit festival. Don't know if they're planning to do it this year. All right. So that should be on our schedule. That should be something in this conversation that we're having, and you're doing it in September. All right. And September 17th, and the election is November sometime. So there seems to be some opportunity for some citizenship education in that context. And we also, Aisha, when is the Avery homecoming this year? Late August? Mid-August. All right, so that's another opportunity. I mean, we, as we hold up Septima Clark's legacy and point to the work that she was doing, can be helpful. And hopefully we can partner with the 67 legacy scholars if we feed them, right? And give them some reinforcement, some positive reinforcement. All right. You know, they could, I mean, they're very busy. I mean, the other night, about 6 of them went to the play. All right. And they were nodding, right? They were tired, right? They have schoolwork to do, right? And of them working part-time jobs. All right. So our support for them, all right, gives us an opportunity for them to dig deeper. Perhaps some of the work and instruction that they could do, they can be helpful to us in our town hall meetings while, you know, they got more time than some of our folks who are working. So we need to think about how we just take the resources that are in this room, and Avery, right? The Black Employees Affinity Group from the Charleston Board of Education, E3, and the Legacy Scholars. The links are in the room, and the Anson Street African American Burial Ground team is in the room. We've got resources, right? We just need to connect the dots to think about how to make that more effective.
I just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of that, because we brought it out, that the whole reason this play was created. The genesis of this play is the League of Women Voters. I don't know if everybody knows that. That's who commissioned it, right? So, I mean, this is their way of trying to push the needle. I just want to make sure, because not everybody would know that.
That's right. Thanks for that, Margaret.
Is the connector between the peninsula and James Island named for Septima Clark? No.
Cross town.
Where is the signage? On President and the cross town. The cross right there on the highway. Okay.
Okay.
You know,
So
Jerry,
yes.
I guess one of the things that in terms of getting people to participate in other things, like I'm relatively new to the area, even though I was born here. And I guess I'd like to become more engaged with some things, you know, because I am unemployed, or as my daughter says, I'm retired, but I'm unemployed. So my time is more available than others. But if there are things that people who are like me, who are, you know, unemployed and have, oh, okay. And
Right.
but
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Ty Collins is my name, and I am here representing Gullah Geechee Group, Inc. I am currently, yes, louder, louder, louder. Can you hear now, everyone? Again, Ty Collins, I am here representing Gullah Geechee Group, Inc. And we have launched a program at Septima P. Clark Academy on Johns Island. It's a collaboration with Gullah Geechee Group, Inc., the Middleton Foundation, and their African Seed Exchange. What we are bringing to the classroom are Gullah Geechee artisans and the investigation of 17th century seeds that were brought here to Charleston from the west coast of Africa and from Barbados that informs Low Country cuisine. And in the process of our 10-week course of instruction, the goal is to introduce foodways, folk traditions, and the African understanding that you don't just eat the fruit, you use the whole plant. And so we're hoping to re-educate young people that they cannot sustain themselves on chicken nuggets.
Say they can't.
They can't. That's number one. The other thing I would like to say, I happen to have bumped into Margaret Seidler the other day, and she mentioned you've got to go see the Septima P. Clark play. And I had read quite a bit about it. I knew about the anthropologist who crafted the piece. I'm a retired professor of English and theater, and I was a little suspect of an anthropologist writing for the stage. However, all of your comments are encouraging to me, so I don't look at any of what I've heard today as a spoiler for when I go on the 24th, I think it is. Yes, I got tickets.
Good.
One thing I think is important, we don't create enough continuity here in Charleston. We have a play that's open. We have a play that's of value. We have a play that can be viable. We should make some effort to begin to demand that the play have an extension, and that's by buying tickets in blocks. Get blocks of tickets. The church should go. Organizations, call the Divine Nine, keep the play running. Coincidentally, the state of Israel was built on theater parties in New York City. So we could do this if we really wanted to, but we have to buy tickets. And when they see the demand, they're going to keep the doors open. And then that's a way of bringing the business to show business.
So a good point. The question as to whether or not there could be an extension, right, of this particular performance, and what would drive that is something that Margaret, you and I should be having a conversation with the folks at Pure about.
Or if not, we could certainly move it and remount it if there's not a tremendous amount of physical costs involved in production. If they're just artifacts or simple set costume, those things could be moved, and then we could keep that play.
Great point.
Going.
Great point. Wonderful. Part of the conversation, at least Wendy and I were having, was whether or not the play will wind up on Broadway at some point, because obviously blowing it out, but that is a possibility.
And that comes from building momentum, momentum.
Great.
And the only way I know that is from experience. I was working with Paulette Williams, who was a classmate of mine, who we all know as Intozaki Shange. And her Color Girls started in a cafe with small groups of people.
Yep.
And then she met Joseph Pack, and we took it to the Booth Theater on Broadway. So it can be done. It can be done.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ty, for all of that inspiration and challenge, and also beginning to provide us with some of the announcements about upcoming events. We know that on Monday, there's an Afrofeminism and Resistance in Brazil talk being given at the Stearns Center here at College of Charleston. It begins at 4:30. That is an opportunity again for us to address the question of resistance. CASM is having its Nehemiah action on Monday evening at 7 p.m. at Mount Moriah. On Tuesday at 5, Critical Conversations, that series of lectures that is being led by Bernie Powers, are having a talk on repatriating artifacts of North American slavery. And that'll be at the Septima Clark Memorial Auditorium at the College of Education. There's the piece on that. I found this out today when I came in here. All right. On Thursday, March 23rd, there is a sabbatical presentation being given by Dr. Marie N. Cadtree on Black Studies and the Ethics of Historical Privacy, when archival sciences are acts of refusal. That will be at the library at Adelson in room 227 at 5 p.m. And what we'll try and do is make sure we post all these on our website.
I just wanted to mention an event where we'll have Dr. Williams Dockery talk about her play at the College of Charleston in the Septima Clark Room 118 on Wednesday, March 22nd at 5 p.m. So that gives us another opportunity to extend this wonderful conversation. So please consider being in attendance.
That's not yet, but I can put it there.
Yeah, we're going to try and crank all this up. So anybody else have announcements? Anything they want to share? Michelle?
The early bird for the conference is today. Submit your submissions for the conference in Jacksonville, Florida, today. We will be accepting submissions to the end of April, though.
So we got to submit if we want to present on an early bird. We have to get it in today
Yes,
to you
the portal.
through the portal.
Yes.
She's a vice president for academic programs for national organizations. So we hopefully we can get some stuff in. If we don't make the early portal, we'll do something later. If all minds are clear, I would thank you for coming. If you are not currently a member of ASALH, please go to our website. And those of us that are seniors, we have a senior rate, right? And for those, and please know that there is the national dues and their local dues. We've kept the local dues at the same level. National raise theirs just a little bit. Most importantly, though, we appreciate you coming today and sharing in this conversation, and keep doing the work that you're doing. Our job, and I continue to say, is to connect the dots. We're not creating new dots. We're just trying to connect those Black history dots that currently exist. Please take an opportunity to look at the materials that Aisha set out from the archival collection on Septima Clark. Get some water. And I forgot to do this. There is a materials document that Don West put together. He mentions the National Archive, in that we got several copies there. We'll also post that on our website, so you don't have to necessarily take a paper copy, but there are a couple of copies there. So thank you again for coming, and have a great rest of the weekend.